Good evening. On behalf of Southern Oregon Climate Action Now, welcome to our 2020 interview series with candidates for the Oregon House, Senate, and County Commissioner. My name is Bob Kaplan, and I will be your moderator for this interview. As a tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit organization, SOCAN cannot endorse candidates, but we can offer constituents information on where candidates stand on issues related to our mission. The focus of these interviews is therefore limited to questions about climate and the environment. All candidates for the general election have been invited to participate in these interviews. Some have accepted and others have declined. Today we'll be speaking with Terrie Martin, a candidate for Jackson County Commission Position 2. Thank you, Terrie, for joining us for this session.
Thanks.
The format is simple. We'll have 2 minutes for candidate introductions, followed by 9 questions, each read by me. The candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and I will provide a warning when there are 10 seconds remaining. And then I will advise when the 2 minutes are up, and we'll move on to the next question. The candidate will then have 2 minutes after the 9 questions that I ask. We'll have 2 minutes for closing remarks. To ensure a fair and balanced interview, all candidates receive the questions 7 days in advance and will be posed exactly the same questions. Also, to ensure fairness, there will be no follow-up questions. Terrie Martin, a candidate for Jackson County Commission Position 2, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
All right, thanks for the invitation. I'm going to use my 2 minutes to introduce myself a little bit. I have lived in Jackson County for 50 years. And during that time, I have experienced the county in a lot of different ways as a student, as a teacher at Southern Oregon University, as a reporter at the Mail Tribune for 14 years, as well as a journalism instructor at Southern Oregon University. And for the last 30 years, I've also owned a small business, a family-owned business, DNS Harley Davidson. So that's been kind of my my bread and butter, and as I've been going forward through life and putting kids through college. Oh, I'm also a mom of 2 brilliant children that are out in the world now. I basically have thought about running for this office for quite a while. The time didn't seem right until now. And that was after the 2016 election, and because journalists usually aren't joiners, we don't usually jump in and take sides and join groups and organizations, but after the 2016 election, I just had to jump in, so I became involved with OR82 Indivisible, and I've been on the steering committee for that group for the last 3 years since the election. And after 3 years of doing that and feeling like I really should have a voice in what's happening in my community and in my world, this position came open, and I decided that today was the day. And I appreciate giving me this opportunity to talk with you today and to answer these questions. I would like to preface it by saying I am not a scientist. So when I look at these questions, they're a little intimidating, but I am a good reporter, and I'm good at finding experts and doing research and trying to understand. And so this is a learning process for me as well, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here today with you.
Okay. Great, thank you. Let's see. Okay, so the first question. The increasing droughts we've been facing have resulted in frequent and substantial water shortages. Please explain what you think the county government should do to address the increasingly difficult problems of water availability and management. How would you deal with the lack of water to provide sufficient irrigation?
That's a big question, a lot of questions. I guess overall, I would give Jackson County, a passing grade on how they've managed water so far. The water master, Siobhan Haynes, has done, a good job from everyone I've talked to of managing what we have. The problem, of course, is that we don't have enough water. The snowpack isn't there, the runoff isn't there, the soil moisture isn't there, and so we're definitely dealing with a deficit in that area. And we need to be able to find ways to better manage it. I do understand that the Medford and Ashland irrigation districts are doing a better job than the county in some ways of working with people. I know Ashland is giving away, for example, different types of low flow appliances, as well as auditing sprinkler systems and even buying back lawns, things like that. And I would hope that Jackson County might be able to do the same thing. However, it's harder because they have water bills, of course, in Medford and Ashland and things like that that can pay for those type of programs. But I would just say that Jackson County doesn't have a great excuse, not to go off topic, but after spending $6 million on a piece of land for a jail they aren't approved to build yet. If I say $6 million, that's what I mean. So there's money there if they really want to do it, if they make a priority, and they need to make a priority out of water at this time. I would say that they need to work closer with the farmers and the growers, and to look at what Terrie and David is doing. Apparently they're setting the standard for working with orchards, and that even hemp farmers at this time are doing a good job because of the plastic they're using, which is another environmental problem, of course, but they're doing a good job at managing water. So anyway, that's what I think.
Okay, thank you. The second question, given that many species, particularly apex predators such as wolves, bears, and cougars are at risk, would you please explain why you would or would not favor more protections for these and other species, such as habitat preservation and hunting restrictions? Also, could you describe how well you think your county is meeting goals to ensure maintenance of biodiversity and healthy wildlife populations?
Well, I live up in the county of one of the canyons of Coleman Creek, for example, and so I live with bear and cougar on a regular basis. I believe I live in their world. They don't live in mine. So at this point, I try to make sure that I do all the things I can do as a person to let them live around my property. Jackson County itself, I think, is doing pretty well on the wolf front, I guess. They've had an advisory commission for 5 years. And they had a conference last fall to work with ranchers to talk about alternatives to shooting wolves. So I think they've made a start there. In terms of cougars, I'm not as convinced that they're doing a great job, only in that I know that in the budget, they've had previously $30,000 in there for a cougar hunter to be able to shoot cougars, which I am not a hunter, and I don't advocate killing wildlife for any reason. Now, the science may not agree with me. Maybe there's wildlife biologists out there that say we need to thin the herd, and I'm happy to listen to that. But I think when it comes to all three, that Jackson County just needs to work with the scientists and the biologists to do what's best. I don't know how well they're doing, except for, like I said, the only thing we know about it is the Wolf Advisory Committee. Beyond that, I think it comes down to educating the public. Like I said, living up in the land like I do, you can live among them and have them be part of your life.
Okay. Thank you. Fire ecologists argue that climate change is the single greatest contributor to wildfires. What do you think should be done in the short term and long term to address the problem of smoke and fire bedeviling the county?
Wow, we need more than 2 minutes for this one.
Yeah.
Well, as my friend Alan Journet says, wildfire and smoke is with us at all times. He's been trying to teach me for the last couple of years that it's part of our ecosystem, that it's not something we're going to be able to eliminate, it's how we manage it. And so I would say that there's a lot of opinions out there. Of course, it's all complicated by climate change again. So what's happening naturally is on a fast track because of the lack of, again, snowpack runoff and soil moisture. I know there are a lot of opinions in terms of whether we should let it burn, or whether we should put it out, or whether we should thin, or whether we should leave the slash down, or whether we should clear cut or not. And I think that it may not be an easy answer for every fire. I mean, you can't have one way to approach it. It may be that we have to look at where the fire is, what type of trees it's burning, where it is in location to other properties, but it may be that we have to have some kind of a coalition or task force or something of forest managers, as well as ecologists and environmentalists that look at the best way to handle these fires. And it may be they have to be on call 24 hours a day to be able to handle these questions. But that's the best I can do.
Okay, thank you. Do you believe that Oregon's statewide land use system, which requires counties and cities to regularly update their plans in sync with statewide goals, is working properly? And if not, what changes would you advocate in the statewide land use goals in your county's current plan?
Well, I was a reporter in the 80s when they actually came up with these original plans. And so I remember covering them when they began drawing urban growth boundaries and such. And I know they weren't popular then, and often they're not popular now. I was talking with a former county planner the other day that was saying that there was, what I didn't realize, there had been a 2-year period where land use laws were dismantled under a ballot measure. I think it was 37. And then they were able to fix it, but it left a lot of loopholes, and it left a lot of landowner rights that allowed them to bend those land use laws. Those need to be taken back under control. And I know that just from the area that I live in, the Phoenix Talent area, we've got 3 places along Culver Road, for example, where they've knocked over orchards and are allowing them to build houses on 1 and 2 acre plots on EFU land that should be used for agriculture. So there's some serious problems here that we need to get under control. I do think we need to give a priority to that swath of land that goes from like Jacksonville to Talent and Phoenix, where you see all the vineyards, and make sure that those are properly supported and protected by the county. And we need to keep as much development out of there as possible. The growth and develop needs to be within cities that are meant to be urbanized and not the county. I will say that I was kind of heartened to hear that Harry and David is putting in some brand new orchards in the north end of the valley, and have spent a lot of money in that. So that gave me hope.
Great. Thank you. So as a county commissioner, how would you work to improve the service and financing of your county's public transportation system?
Well, public transportation, public mass transit is a real challenge for the Rogue Valley in that we are mostly rural. We have a great bus system, of course, in RBTD, but they are a separate levy, a separate entity that basically has its own board, its own funding. I know it gets enough funding from the state to do a lot of education for carpooling and bike and pedestrian transportation. But the Jackson County needs to partner with it a little closer, and they certainly need to support the levy that they're going to need when theirs runs out in 2021. But until then, it's incredibly difficult to do mass transit in the Rogue Valley. From the standpoint that, for example, where I live, I'm 5 miles from the nearest bus stop. And then by the time I've driven 5 miles to get on the bus to go another 5 miles, it doesn't make any sense. So we're going to have better programs that are more creative to be able to support people in these rural areas. And I will say that I've always wanted to use those railroad tracks that go between Medford and Ashland to have a little commute train. I know there's people who have talked about that before, but I'd love to have a way for people to get back and forth since those tracks aren't being used.
Right. Okay. Given the consensus among climate scientists that global warming is a reality and human activity is largely responsible, what do you think should be the county's top 3 or 4 priorities to address the climate crisis?
Well, I think first of all, they just have to make it a priority in everything that they do. It is the problem that we're all facing. And if we don't solve this problem, none of the problems matter, right? If we don't have a planet, if we don't have a world, and we don't have a land to live on, then there are no other problems. So I would ask that the county commission begin using it as a lens for every piece of legislation, every decision that they make in terms going forward. So I think it should start with auditing themselves. They are a giant entity. They have tremendous number of buildings, employees, fleet of vehicles. All of those should be moving toward zero energy costs and green energy. I tend to think that they need to make a climate plan of some kind as well, and perhaps join what's called the Climate Coalition of Counties, put on by the Climate Reality Project. They're not on that list, I checked today, but I would hope that they would go there so that they could make a goal and stick to it. They need to be looking toward not just promoting alternative energies, but maybe requiring them in some of the developments that are happening here, encouraging green energy companies to locate here, turning away companies that will not be good for our environment, and to work with the state and hopefully the federal government when it comes around again to work for better energy programs that will support people in Jackson County to make good decisions.
Okay, thank you. So methane is a greenhouse gas 86 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Given the inevitable emissions of methane that would result from the proposed Pembina Jordan Cove LNG export facility and pipeline, would you please explain where you stand on the project and why you reached that conclusion?
I can do this in under 2 minutes. I'm against this proposal. I'm against most pipeline, if not all pipeline proposals. I think it makes no sense to invest in fossil fuels at this time when we've got such a huge crisis on our hands. And it's just short-term economic gain with long-term environmental consequences. So that's where I stand.
Okay, thank you. So many communities across the globe and here in Oregon have developed climate action plans designed to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and prepare for the changing climate. Do you think your county should develop a climate action plan? Please explain your response, and if you think it should be done, how would you suggest accomplishing it?
Well, I think I kind of covered that in answer number 6, but yeah, I definitely believe there needs to be a plan. If you don't set the goals, then you're not going to meet them. So somebody's got to figure out what we can achieve and maybe look at what other counties are doing right now and find out how we can achieve that, set the goals, make the list of plan of the steps we need to achieve it and start going in that direction. I don't think they're doing that now. So I just believe it has to do with having the goals, the plan, and the steps, and getting everybody on board.
Thank you. And our final question. Please offer your thoughts on how, as a member of the Board of County Commissioners, you would want to play a role in reducing the impacts of climate change in your county and encourage coronavirus recovery efforts that add renewable energy jobs, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, sequester carbon, and promote social justice.
Well, I think that the current board for the last 10 years has been kind of an echo chamber of people that believe the same, have the same more conservative values that often put the economy before the environment and corporations before people. So I think that what I would say is every piece of legislation that comes in front of me, I would ask, how does it impact working families? How does it impact seniors? How does it impact students, children, people of color? How does it impact people on the margins of society? And how does it impact the environment, the wildlife that we have here, the beautiful, amazing environment that we live in, and our role in the whole climate crisis? So I think that as long as we ask ourselves that question, no matter what comes before us, we at least have a chance of making a difference. And I do know that if I'm elected, I may be the only progressive voice on the county, and I might be overvoted, but I would say that they wouldn't do it without me raising my voice on behalf of all of those organizations, of all of those groups that I listed there.
Well, thank you very much. Now that's the end of our question session, and you have up to 2 minutes for any closing remarks that you may wish to make.
I think it's time that we learn more about the county commission. I think that in the past few years, it's not been covered by the media. I think that they haven't done a very good job of telling us who they are, what they're doing, and what decisions that they're making. So part of my goal as a county commissioner would be to become more transparent, to teach people about how the county affects their everyday lives, and to get more people involved as resources and as experts, as well as getting them more involved in the decision-making process. I would hope that as a county commissioner that I would be out in the field, basically asking more people about what they need and what they want, instead of waiting for people to come to county commission meetings, because people just can't come. They're during the day, and even if they were at night, if you're a mom that's been working all day with 3 kids and you come home from your job, the last thing you're going to do is to show up at a county commission meeting. So to me, part of this whole thing is making sure that the county commission is more accessible to people and that everyone has a chance to be part of it and understand that the county plays a huge role in their life, not just in the property taxes that they pay, but in the decisions being made in their lands around them, And so that's what I hope to do.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This concludes this interview with Terrie Martin, a candidate for Jackson County Commission Position 2. So thank you very much, Terrie, for joining us, to all of you for viewing, and to Carmen Profit for driving the technology that made this possible.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Thank you, Terrie. Goodbye.